Number 1. The parking garage. It was nearly midnight when I left the office that night. The city was quiet, almost unnaturally quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes every footstep echo too loudly. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the streets slick and reflective. The lights from street lamps shimmered in the puddles like fractured pieces of glass. I pulled my coat tighter, tried to tell myself it was just another late night, just another routine drive home. But deep down, I felt an unease I could not shake. The elevator hummed as I descended to the underground parking garage. When the doors opened, a wave of cold, damp air hit me, mixed with the faint smell of motor oil and concrete. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, some flickering intermittently, some dead entirely, leaving the far corners of the garage in near darkness. My footsteps echoed unnaturally across the concrete floor. Drips of water fell from the ceiling, rhythmically, like tiny metronomes. In that silence, every noise seemed magnified, and I realized I could hear my own heartbeat echoing against the walls. I walked toward my car, parked near the back, and noticed movement in the shadows. A flicker, almost imperceptible, between two concrete pillars. I stopped. Scrape. A soft sound. Someone was there. My mind raced, trying to convince me it was my imagination. Maybe a rat, a bird, or the garage settling. But the scrape came again, slower this time, deliberate. Footsteps. I fumbled with my keys and unlocked the car. The headlights blinked twice, reflecting on the wet floor. For a moment, it looked like someone had stepped out from the shadows behind a pillar. My pulse quickened. I slid into the seat and locked the doors. Every instinct screamed at me to leave immediately. The engine started with a roar, and I turned slowly to watch the garage. Nothing. Over the next few nights, it became worse. He appeared unpredictably, sometimes waiting silently behind a concrete pillar, sometimes standing at the far end of the garage, just at the edge of my vision. I parked in different spots, on different floors, sometimes in garages in neighboring buildings. It did not matter. He seemed to know exactly when I would arrive, exactly when I would leave. The notes began after the first week. Small scraps of paper under my windshield wiper sometimes slid under the gate. Blank. No words, no marks, just paper. But I knew they were from him. I started noticing subtle signs. Tire marks in places they shouldn't be. Shadows flitting in the distance. The subtle echo of steps following mine down the rows of cars. Sometimes I would stop, holding my breath, and the echo would stop too. Sometimes I would run, and the steps would follow, always just behind, never quite in the same spot. One night, I arrived later than usual, hoping to avoid him. The garage was emptier than normal. The flickering lights created long, dark shadows that stretched across the floor. I unlocked my car. The reflection in the glossy, wet floor caught something that made my stomach drop. A figure stepping out slowly from behind a pillar. Not running, not hiding, just stepping, deliberate and calm. I could see the glint of wet fabric on his dark jacket. His hat obscured his face, tilted slightly as he watched. I reversed quickly, tires squealing against the wet concrete. I did not look back. I drove out, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, he did not move. He did not run. He simply stood, calm and patient, watching me leave. The next day, I could not stop thinking about him. I replayed the image in my head. The glint of the jacket, the tilt of the head, the calmness. Nothing in his posture suggested panic or haste, just observation. The following nights, I arrived earlier, parked near the exit, tried to vary my routine. But it did not matter. He was always there, sometimes at the far end of the garage, sometimes near the corner where the stairs led to the street. He seemed to appear out of nowhere, always patient, always watching. Then the notes changed. One evening, I found a note under my windshield wiper. This time, it was slightly folded. I opened it with shaking hands. Blank. Nothing. And yet, my chest tightened. My stomach knotted. The message was clear. He was near. Watching. Waiting. I began noticing patterns. Subtle details I hadn't before. The angle of the lights. The way the shadows fell between the cars. The small scuff marks on the floor that seemed to lead nowhere but always returned to me. I started to feel trapped, suffocated. The garage no longer a place I could pass through quickly. It had become a theater for his presence. One night, I decided to confront the fear. I stayed in my car, headlights off, engine running, waiting. I waited for what felt like hours. My pulse was deafening. The echoes of the drips from the ceiling became a maddening rhythm. And then I saw him, slowly, deliberately emerging from the far end. Tall, dark jacket soaked in rain, hat tilted low. He did not run. He did not hide. He just moved toward me with deliberate calm. Each step measured, like he was enjoying the anticipation. My hands gripped the wheel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive. I could not move. At the last second, before he reached the car, he stopped, tilted his head, and then vanished into the shadows, as if he had never been there. I drove out faster than I ever had, tires skidding slightly on the wet ramp, heart pounding, lungs burning, hands shaking. I parked far away from the garage the next day. I started taking taxis. I started avoiding leaving the office late. But he found me again. A note slid under my windshield wiper. Blank. Waiting. Every day I check my surroundings. Every night I imagine him there. Standing. Watching. Patient. Waiting. And sometimes, in the shadows, I swear I can see a figure just out of focus, tilting his head slightly, as if he knows I am watching him. I have not parked in that garage since, but I know he is still there, always watching, waiting, and I know, no matter how far I go, I have not escaped him. Number 2, the cabin. I rented the cabin to escape the city, to be alone, to breathe, to think. The road leading up to it was narrow and winding, flanked by dense pines that blocked most of the moonlight. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. Snow had started to fall lightly, dusting the road and the trees with a cold, quiet stillness. The owner had warned me it hadn't been used in months. "The only thing you'll have to worry about is the wind rattling the windows," he said, smiling as though he knew something I didn't. I laughed nervously and nodded, trying to convince myself that I was ready for solitude. I would learn how wrong I was. The first night was calm, almost peaceful. I lit a fire, made tea, and sat in the living room, listening to the wind through the trees. Outside, the snow fell slowly, covering everything in a soft white blanket. I slept easily, feeling for the first time in weeks that I was alone in the world. The next morning, I went for a walk down the dirt road behind the cabin. The snow crunched under my boots, the only sound in the silent forest. When I turned back, I froze. Behind my footprints were others. Human footprints. Big, deliberate, not mine. They led toward the cabin. I told myself it was someone hiking, someone who had come to enjoy the snow. But there were no other cabins for miles, no roads nearby, no way someone could have arrived unnoticed. I checked every direction. Nothing. I shrugged, convinced it was a trick of the snow, some imperfection in the ground. But the feeling of being watched had begun. That night, the wind picked up, the windows rattled, and I heard it, the first sound that made my stomach knot. Footsteps in the snow, slow, methodical, circling the cabin. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. I froze, held my breath. The sound stopped, and then, faintly, a low exhale, almost like someone breathing near the glass. I did not sleep. I sat in the chair by the window, flashlight in hand, watching the dark. Hours passed. The wind howled, rattling the panes, shaking the trees. Then the footsteps began again, closer this time, circling the porch. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. My hands gripped the flashlight so tightly that my knuckles whitened. The next day, I inspected the perimeter. The snow had covered the tracks again, except for a single line of prints that led to the porch. At the doorframe, someone had left a black glove. Wet, small, deliberately placed. My pulse raced. I wanted to leave, but the car's battery was dead. I had no choice but to stay. That night, the sounds returned. Crunching, circling, the shadow flitting between trees. Sometimes, I could swear I saw him leaning against a trunk, his face obscured, just watching. Other times, I caught a glimpse of the glint of wet fabric in the firelight. He did not move quickly. He did not run. He simply observed, patient and patient. Over the next week, the intensity increased. Footsteps in the snow came earlier, closer. At times, I thought I heard breathing directly outside the window. Once, I swore I saw a dark shape standing in the treeline, just beyond the reach of the porch light. I would point the flashlight and it would vanish instantly. I tried leaving the cabin during the day, but the snow had blocked the road. Each day, I felt the weight of his presence more acutely. The sense of being watched became suffocating. I could not go outside without imagining his eyes on me, following me. Each night, I checked every window, locked every door, and yet, I could feel him just beyond the glass, just beyond the light. One evening, the footsteps came again, but this time, they moved with purpose. Around the cabin, circling closer, lingering at the back door. I held the flashlight as high as I could, sweeping the snow. There he was, just for a moment, standing beneath the shadow of a pine. Tall, dark, still, observing, and then, as always, he vanished. I began hearing noises indoors too. The creak of floorboards near the door, the faint rattle of the windows when there was no wind. I convinced myself it was the cabin settling, but the footsteps outside became louder, heavier, and sometimes, when I would look out, I would swear I saw movement in the snow, shadows shifting too precisely to be caused by trees or snowdrifts. By the 10th night, I was living in constant tension. I barely slept. I kept a chair by the window, flashlight ready, waiting for the sound of snow crunching under boots. Sometimes I would see him, sometimes only the outline of a tall figure at the edge of the woods. I began talking to myself just to stay awake, just to convince myself that I was still in control. One night, around 2 in the morning, I finally dared to step outside. I had left the door unlocked to bait him, to see if he would appear. The snow was thick, muffling all sound except my own footsteps. I held the flashlight ahead of me, and there he was, standing in the shadows, just at the treeline, watching, not running, not hiding, just watching. I froze, my chest tight. He did not move when I turned my head. The beam of the flashlight caught a glimpse of a glint, his jacket wet from the snow. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood. I realized he had been following me for days, nights, hours of observation, waiting, studying me, and there was nothing I could do. I retreated inside, slammed the door, locked it, and watched from the window. He did not leave. The shadow remained at the edge of the woods, just beyond the reach of the cabin light. I stayed awake the entire night, flashlight in hand, watching, waiting. Morning came, weak and gray, and the shadow was gone. The snow had covered his tracks again, but I knew they would return. Each night, I feel his presence. I hear the crunch of snow when there is none. I see shadows in the treeline that vanish when I look directly. I have not left the cabin. I cannot. The road remains blocked, the snow still deep, and every night, as the wind rattles the windows, I feel him standing just outside, waiting, watching, patient, and I know deep down that he will not leave, not until I do something I cannot even imagine yet. Number 3, the apartment. When I moved to the city, I thought I had found the perfect little apartment. 3rd floor, brick building, quiet neighborhood, and a view of the alley across from the building next door. At first, everything seemed ordinary. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, and settled in. I did not notice him at first. It started subtly, a movement in the corner of my vision, just across the alley. The building opposite was old, its windows narrow and dark, some covered with curtains, some bare. One night, as I sat reading near my window, I noticed a shadow standing in one of those windows. I blinked, focused, nothing. The next night, the shadow returned. A man, standing still, facing my window, never moving, never turning on lights, just standing. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a reflection, a trick of the city lights. But then, I began noticing patterns. He was there almost every night, always at the same hour, always facing my window, always watching. The first time I felt real fear was when I saw the camera flash. A brief reflection in the window, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Someone had taken a photo from across the alley. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a photograph of me standing at the window the night before. No note, no message, just me. I called the building manager immediately. He checked the apartment across from mine. Empty, vacant for months. No meter readings, no lights, nothing. I tried ignoring it. I closed the blinds, rearranged my furniture so I would not be near the window. But every night I felt it, the presence, watching, studying, waiting. Then came the subtle signs, shadows moving in the alley, reflections in the windows. Sometimes, when I woke in the middle of the night, the blinds were slightly parted, and I would find a photograph on the table below, each one taken from closer than the last, always showing me more clearly. I stopped sleeping near the window. I moved furniture away from it. I even began sleeping with my back to it, trying to convince myself that if I could not see him, he could not see me. But I knew that was not true. He mirrored my movements, each turn of my head, each stretch, each glance toward the window. One night I stayed awake, listening. The city was quiet except for distant traffic and the hum of streetlights. At precisely 3 in the morning, a faint sound reached me, the click of a shutter, the reflection of a flash across the alley. My heart jumped. I looked toward the window opposite mine, but it was dark, empty, and yet I felt it, the weight of someone watching me, moving, waiting. The days blurred together. I stopped going out in the evenings. I avoided the windows entirely. My friends called, but I lied, saying I was busy with work, exhausted. I could not tell anyone. No one would understand. Then came the night I realized he had been inside. I woke to find the blinds slightly moved, the table below my window cleared. A photograph lay on the floor, close to the windowsill. I picked it up. It was me sitting on my couch, reading, taken from outside, closer than ever. Panicked, I checked all locks, doors, windows. Everything was secure. I thought about calling the police, but without evidence of breaking and entering, they could not help. And yet I knew he was there, watching, patient, waiting. Each night I check my apartment before going to bed. Every sound is magnified. Every reflection in the window seems alive. Shadows in the alley move too precisely to be caused by wind or passing cars. Sometimes, I catch a glimpse of him in the reflection of my own glass, just standing, facing me. The photographs continue to arrive, each one taken closer than the last, each one showing more of me, alone in my apartment. And I know he is always there, across the alley, waiting. I have not looked out the window for over a week. I have not opened the blinds. But sometimes, I wake in the middle of the night, and I swear I feel eyes on me, on the back of my neck, watching, following. I cannot tell anyone. No one would understand. And tonight, as I sit in the dark, listening to the hum of the city, I think I see movement across the alley again. A dark shape still unmoving, tilting its head slightly, waiting. And I know he will not leave. Not until I do something. Something I cannot even imagine.